Power has always been about control. Control of money, control of information, control of the levers that shape what people see, think, and do. That hasn't changed. What's changed is how easily that control moves. We build a world where everything, our homes, our phones, our cars, even our thoughts, are connected. A world where code replaces borders, where the Internet of Things became the Internet of Influence. And when influence becomes that easy, it becomes a national security risk. Because if someone can shape what you buy, what you believe, or who you trust, they don't need to attack your country. They can just rewrite your reality. That's the world we live in now, where the old boundaries between business, politics, and defense have disappeared, where control isn't somewhere out there, it's everywhere. Because when everything is connected, everything is national security. Today, we're talking about how control hides in plain sight, how power went digital, and how understanding the truth might be the only way to stay free. Let's get to it. Hey everybody, welcome to Midweek Sitrep, your bi-weekly briefing on national security and the forces that shape it. My name is Fowler, and I'm your host. Every other week, I give you the context you need to see what's really going on so you can stay mission-focused. Now today, we're talking about something that's been sitting in plain sight. The invisible network holding our entire world together. Your food, your data, your paycheck, your peace of mind, all tied to systems that feel ordinary until they stop working. Because that's when you realize it's not just business, not just politics, it's national security. The idea that in the modern world, everything is connected to power, and power, every ounce of it, is connected to security. So let's start by breaking down what this idea really means and why the fight for control is no longer exclusively on battlefields, but also appears in the systems that we use every day. Let's get to it. Wars once ended with surrender papers. Now they can begin with SWIFT codes. When Russian forces crossed into Ukraine, the most powerful countermove wasn't military action. It was financial. Within hours, Western governments froze roughly $600 billion in Russian reserves and disconnected key banks from the SWIFT payment network. That single decision slowed trade, weakened the ruble, and showed the world that global finance isn't neutral. It's a strategic instrument. It proved that money no longer just measures power, it can be used to project it. Now, China approaches the same terrain, but differently. Instead of sanctions, it uses credit, offering infrastructure loans that bind partners through debt and supply contracts. Influenced by investment instead of isolation. Together, those examples reveal a simple truth. The ability to grant or restrict access to capital now shapes global behavior as decisively as any military alliance. Money has always been power, let's not kid ourselves. But today, it's coded, traceable, and policy-driven. The institutions that move it, the banks, networks, and payment rails, have quietly become instruments of national strategy. We used to measure control in square miles. Now we measure it in bandwidth. 95% of the world's data travels through undersea cables. These are thin strands of glass fiber laid quietly on the ocean floor. And there are about 400 of them linking continents together with just a few hundred landing stations deciding who connects and who doesn't. Those cables are the circulatory system of the global economy. Think about it. Every payment, video call, and trade route depends on them. Yet most people never think about who builds, owns, or repairs them. Then there are the semiconductors, the chips that power everything from fighter jets to refrigerators. About 60% of the world's supply comes from Taiwan, with one company, TSMC, producing most of the advanced designs. That concentration turns an island of 23 million people into a global pressure point. And every few months, the world gets a reminder of how fragile it all is. A ship stuck in the Suez Canal halts nearly 12% of global trade. A ransomware attack shuts down a major pipeline in the United States. A single factory fire in Japan disrupts the global auto industry for months. Efficiency built the modern economy, but the same efficiency removed its slack, the buffer that made it resilient. Now, when one link breaks, the chain jolts everywhere. The takeaway isn't panic. No, it's perspective. Control in this century isn't about conquering territory. It's about being indispensable to the systems everyone else relies on. All the great empires, they used to compete for land. But now, we all compete for attention. The platforms that entertain us also quietly shape what we see, what we value, and what we ignore. TikTok, Meta, X, YouTube. They're not just social networks. They're global information systems engineered to capture attention and monetize emotion. Every post, every clip, every recommendation is part of a feedback loop tuned to one goal: engagement. But engagement isn't neutral. The same algorithms that try to sell sneakers can amplify outrage, polarize communities, or flood a conversation with just noise. A viral video can move markets. A trending narrative can shift political pressure. A coordinated campaign of bots can alter what millions believe is, quote, common sense. See, governments frame this as culture debate, free speech versus censorship. In reality, it's national resilience, because the ability to steer collective attention is now a form of power. That's why nations invest in information operations, digital literacy campaigns, and even their own social platforms. It's why algorithms are being audited like weapon systems. The contest isn't about controlling minds. It's about controlling reach. And whoever controls reach shapes reality. Information dominance hasn't replaced air superiority. It's just joined it. And the contest for attention, well, that never stops. Every nation tells a story. The smart ones make theirs go viral. In the 20th century, America exported jazz, blue jeans, and Hollywood dreams. Those weren't just products. They were symbols of freedom, prosperity, and optimism. Today, the exports look a little different. Data, software, streaming platforms. The new Hollywood, it runs on bandwidth, not with film reels. The other nations have learned the same playbook. China funds Confucius Institutes, which are state-backed media networks, and blockbuster co-productions to shape how it's seen abroad. South Korea's K-pop industry and entertainment boom turned pop culture into foreign policy, spreading their language, fashion, and identity. Even a Marvel film can reach more hearts than a diplomat ever could. Because culture isn't background noise. It's narrative infrastructure. It's how nations define what normal looks like. the art, the design, the memes. Each carries an idea about how the world should work and who gets to lead it. Soft power used to be a slogan, something politicians mentioned when they didn't want to talk about weapons. But now, see, soft power is a strategy. Because the contest between nations isn't just about territory or trade. It's about imagination. Whose vision of the future the world decides to believe. Governments used to set the rules. Now corporations write half of them in code. For example, in Ukraine, Microsoft runs the cyber defense that keeps ministries online. Starlink satellites reconnect towns after missile strikes. And Apple decides where its cloud data physically resides and which governments can see it. A single privacy update in a Silicon Valley boardroom can force regulators across the world to rewrite their laws. These aren't isolated choices. They're acts of statecraft performed by private actors, measured in uptime and trust. Compliance has become strategy. Trust is now currency. And brand reputation functions like deterrence. When a company draws a moral line or moves a supply chain, it quietly shifts global influence. No press releases, no flag, just code and capital. And that's the new reality. The modern superpowers don't always have armies. Some have tickers. And in a world where technology and policy are fused, the next geopolitical map won't just be written by diplomats. It'll be compiled by developers, designers, and general counsels deciding what's possible. Underneath it all, there's people. Citizens, engineers, consumers, all living inside systems we didn't design, but we can't function without. The phone in your pocket, it links you to every layer of power we've talked about. Finance, infrastructure, information, culture, commerce, all converging in a single tap. That's what makes this moment different from every other era before it. National security isn't a conversation happening somewhere else. It's lived through the headlines, your apps, the algorithms, and habits. It's what we trust, what we share, what we choose to ignore. The goal here, it's not to panic, it's to notice. To understand that these systems aren't abstract, they're personal. Every click, every connection, every decision contributes to how power moves. Awareness is the new literacy, and literacy is the first step toward freedom. Because when you understand how power works, you stop being controlled by it. You start choosing how to use it. So we're coming to the end, and it should be clear. There's a lot of talk about what it used to be and what it is now. And the facts are, power hasn't disappeared. We know that. People go for power. Power is control. Control is power. It's just now it's rewired. The same contest for control that once played out in open conflict now moves a little bit more quietly through systems so ordinary we forget to look. Pipelines, payments, posts, pixels. The modern battlefield is built from the infrastructure of everyday life. We've merged them together. Every transaction, every signal, every line of code. It's part of a larger struggle for leverage, over markets, over information, over trust. And that's the point. National security isn't just about armies or borders or obscure laws and regulations. It's about the networks that keep the lights on, the data that shapes what we believe, the dependencies that define who we are. So when I say everything is national security, it's not a slogan, it's a reminder. The systems that make life possible are the same ones that make it vulnerable. And seeing those connections clearly It's not paranoia. It's navigation. And that's today's Sitrep. Make sure you keep up with Midweek Sitrep on Substack and YouTube for more on this and other topics. You'll find short clips, interviews, and bonus content. And if you want to support the show, check out our merch on everythingisnationalsecurity.com. Every shirt and hat helps keep us independent and growing. I'm Jerry Fowler, and remember, everything is national security. See you next time. Midweek Sitrep with Jerry Fowler is an independent production of OpScent Media Group, LLC. The information provided in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, financial, or professional advice. Listeners should consult with a qualified professional before making any decisions based upon the content discussed. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host, Jerry Fowler, and any guest, and do not reflect the official policy, position, or endorsement of any current or former employer, client, government agency, military organization, educational institution, or any other entity for which the host, Jerry Fowler, may be affiliated. Mention of a company, product, or service does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation. Any references are provided for informational purposes only. This podcast does not disclose any classified, proprietary, or confidential information. All discussions are based upon publicly available information and personal expertise. Everything's national security. OpScent Media Group, LLC.